There you are. I'm just going to make this window bigger so that I'm not looking down on anyone. All right, cool. So, firstly, happy Wednesday. Might as well, because no point having a sad Wednesday. And I feel like we started this shiur at the perfect part of the Torah to be able to find so much relevance for where things are at in our lives, particularly here in Victoria, with the whole lockdown thing. And this week's parasha again just offered so many topics that I realized the shir could actually easily go on for a couple hours and would be like, oh, come on, there's got to be more. So let me begin. Let's turn to Parshas Akev. Which is the third parsha in the book of Devarim. Devarim is the fifth book of the Torah. And like the whole book of Devarim is Moshe recounting a whole lot of different things that have happened in the desert, but it's actually more than that, because it's also not just recounting, but it actually has mitzvahs that are in there that are not found elsewhere in the Torah. So that's a very, very important thing, that Devarim is not just seen as some repetitious monologue by Moshe, but actually is in the repetition itself, there is something more than something. There are many things to be learnt out. And there's subtle differences in how Moshe retells the story compared to when he first records stories. These subtleties are very important as well. There is a difference in the word. It was last week's Pasha, and the Ten Commandments as they are reported in Parshas Yisro, in Parshas Jethro, because there's that fundamental difference in that one says, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos HaKadosh, remember to keep the Shabbos holy. And then in verse 100, it's Shomer es Yom HaShabbos HaKadosh, guard the Shabbos and keep it holy. It causes so much to be learnt from the commandment of Shabbos, because the Torah used two different words, indicating that we've got two different things that need to be learnt out of this very one same commandment. We also have Rashi telling us that when the Ten Commandments were actually given, both the words Zachar and Shomer were used, but they were used at the same time. So we have the overlaying of two words at the same time, which is not humanly possible. We can't speak two words at the same time, nor can we write two words at the same time. And therefore, when the Ten Commandments are written in the Torah, we get written with one word, and then the second time it's written with the other word. But when Hashem actually presented the Ten Commandments, they had both words being used. And so there's so many things to learn from it. So this repetition called Sefer Devarim is not just a repetition. It is indeed a whole set of new lessons that need to be drawn from. So today, the first discussion we're going to have is on facilitating positive belief. Facilitating positive belief is something that I want to talk about based on the first aliyah, the first section. So if you were looking in the first few psukim of the parasha, the first major discussion is in regards to not fearing the nations. And so this is what the pasuk says. I'm starting from pasuk 17, verse 17, and this parasha is picking up smack in the middle of Perek Zayin, chapter 7. So it says, Kisema bilvavcha rabim goyim ha'elu mimeni eicha uchal lahirisham. You might say to yourself, Moshe says to the people, you might say to yourself, these nations are more numerous than us. How will we be able to drive them out? Loi sira mehem, the next pasuk says in pasuk 18, Loi sira mehem, zacher tizkar es asher asa Hashem elikecha lefari l'chol Mitzrayim. Don't fear them. You should always remember that Hashem your God, always remember what Hashem your God did to Paro and to the whole of Egypt. And then he goes on, Hamases Hagdolos, the great signs, Asher Roi, Necha, Va'isas HaMovsim, all the big miracles, Vayad Chazaka, Vazrei Natuya, Asher Yitziacha, Hashem Lekecha, that Hashem has done to you when he took you out of Egypt. Ken Yasa Hashem Lekecha L'chol Amim, Asher Atu Yorim Mipneim. So Hashem is going to do that in the future as well. In wars that lie ahead, and there wars lying ahead at this point of the story. They're going to go into Israel, and there's Joshua, etc., and there is going to be a number of things that actually lie ahead. And Moshe is saying, we all see that that's lying ahead. Please don't be afraid. Draw on the past. Now, he doesn't say draw on the past and just replicate it. He's saying draw on the past and remember what Hashem did to those people. Sorry, just need to rest my chumash. Just remember what Hashem did to those people and what happened in those situations in order to foster your belief. So what is this whole idea of belief? Sorry, resting too many things on my lap. What is this whole idea of belief, particularly as it relates to thinking positively to create positive outcomes? So when we talk about thinking positively, often it's misunderstood. So someone might say, I sat down and I pictured exactly what a good reality should be. I pictured a happy family. I pictured peace. I pictured whatever. And I was so committed to that image. I was so committed to believing that no matter what's going on right now, that is attainable. I can get that. That is something Hashem can create. I believe in Hashem's power. I don't have to know how Hashem is going to give me those things, but I know Hashem. And I thought positively. I thought about the person getting better. I thought about all these things, and Hashem did not deliver. So how can you tell me that if I think positively, there will be a positive outcome? Because I did, and it didn't work. So the first thing is, I don't know. I don't know why it didn't work. I'm not Hashem. I don't know why Hashem makes the decisions that Hashem makes. But I also feel that perhaps this idea of thinking good is not necessarily clearly understood. What I mean by that is, what I mean by that is as follows. Thinking good does not mean imagining. Thinking good, thinking positively is a mindset. And it's an attitude to how we approach our reality. And it is a mental system to ensure that we don't allow negative thoughts to bring us down. So how does that work? So let's take our situation here. We're in COVID lockdown, and it's extremely restrictive. Extremely restrictive. So those restrictions that have been placed on us impacting income, it's impacting health, it's impacting family, it's impacting relationships, it's impacting self-esteem, it's impacting all sorts of things. And more often than not, negatively. To be positive is to say, I don't know what is going on, and I don't know why what's going on is going on. But I am absolutely certain that it's going to be good. And I'm absolutely certain that even what is going on right now is good, even though it is a concealed goodness. It is goodness that has been concealed in negativity. So I see sickness, I see death, I see pain, I see that. But somewhere deeper within what's going on, there is actually something good, and I don't understand it. and that it is going to be good. Not it's going to be good because A, B, and C is going to happen. It's going to be good, and I am going to completely disconnect from imagining what the definition of good is, because my imaginative definition of what good is going to look like is limited to my own simplistic capabilities. So if you have a very limited imagination, then you're saying, Hashem, it's going to be like this. Maybe Hashem's got something much bigger in store, but because we can't imagine it. If we look at any era of history, you will find any era of history where there was a revolutionary change, whether it be political revolutions, whether it be social revolutions, whether it be intellectual revolutions, where new ideas were born, old systems fell. They weren't conceivable. Not just, I don't know how that superpower is going to fall, it's impossible. But the idea of something that you can't imagine happening is inconceivable. If I would have told you in 1920, see that light in the sky, the moon? I reckon there's a way we can get there. Everyone would say, how? What, you're going to build a ladder? What, you're going to build a trampoline? And they would have been limited in their thinking of how do we right now move from a lower place to a higher place, from one location to another. They would have been limited in that. No one would have said, I suppose you're right, with a rocket we could get there, because they didn't have rocket technology. Rocket technology was something that would start being played with 20 years later, in the 1940s, and be further evolved until eventually we get to the 1960s. And there are some incredible changes of thinking that have to take place in order to be conceived, let alone to the moon. But it happened. And nobody, all the geniuses of the world for thousands of years before rocket technology was actually invented and discovered, the geniuses would have fathomed such a thing. Feathers, well, how are you gonna, but just because no one could conceive it didn't mean it was impossible. It just meant no one could conceive it. You start to work out how you're going to get to the moon, and you're not the rocket technology inventor, you're sitting there working based on what you know, you're already never going to get to the moon, because you can't walk, you can't horse ride the moon, you can't stick feathers, you can't make a ladder that's so tall. So you've exhausted all the options that are part of the limitation of your own mind. Rather, the only way to develop rocket technology is by saying, whatever I know is nothing. I'd like to now open my mind to something new. So to think good is not to define how what is going on is good. To think good is to say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's going on, but I'm completely open to crazy things happening. It's possible that tomorrow there'll come the vaccine. You're still limited. What we need to do is say, it is going to be good. And what Moshe is saying in this week's parasha is not Hashem split the sea and he drowned the Egyptians. He's going to do that again. Hashem never split the sea again and drowned any other foreign nation in that way. It never happened. It happened once and never happened again. What Moshe is saying is, look at the past. Look at the past. Crazy things have happened. Trust me, crazy things are going to happen in the future. Don't work out how, just believe that crazy things can happen. So when we say tracht gut wird sein gut, think positively and it will be positive, what we're saying is just think in a positive mindset, that it does not need to be a negative outcome just because it's perceived as negative right now. So when we talk about cultivating positive thinking, what we're talking about is not cultivate positive imagination. What we're talking about is cultivate the ability to believe in possibilities that go beyond human comprehension and assessment, and to believe that things can happen. Don't say what those things are. Just believe that they can happen. In order to do that, we need to shut down the negative imagination and the negative voices that say, I know everything, nothing can happen. I've done all the maths, nothing happened. What we need to do is work with all the knowledge and all the imagination that we have to respond to my now. So based on the knowledge that I have of medicine, based on the knowledge that I have of maths, based on the knowledge that I have, whatever, I can do this right now. I can't fly to the moon tomorrow. I can't fly to the moon today. But you're asking me, can I go and earn $1? Yeah, based on this, I can go and earn $1. I don't know if that's going to be enough money for in 2 days' time, but I know what I can do right now. And I believe that anything can happen. Not, I believe I'll be rich tomorrow. I believe anything can happen. Whatever is going to be because Hashem mandates that. And I'm not going to limit Hashem based on my limited thinking. Now, why that's a very important thing is because we all have what's called a Yechidah Shebenefesh. We all have a part of our soul that is, one with Hashem. And it is the point of Hashemness within us. Hashem in the undiluted, unadulterated, unprocessed, unformed, lacking form or anything. When we become open to Hashem's infinite capacity, and we actually are completely trusting that it's going to be good, and I have enough evidence to know that Hashem has been there in the past, and therefore, hang on. I don't need to imagine what the miracle looks like. I just know Hashem whips out miracles whenever they're needed. I know that Hashem doesn't whip out miracles when they're not needed. I know that Hashem creates a logical system and an illogical system at the same time. When I say I believe, then I'm tagging on my Yechidah, and that creates a flow of Hashem's energy in this world that is not bound to the system that Hashem created when designing this world. This world was designed according to the rules of Teva, nature, Elokim, which is the name of God as it relates to containment and definition. Although that is the method Hashem used to create the world, the Yechidah, the oneness of Hashem, is not limited to that. It just is currently in a contained form. So trees growing leaves in spring and shedding them in autumn, we call that nature. But that's an incredible miracle as defined by Shem Elokim, by the name of God, which is the name of Hashem, Elokim, which is giving that infinite energy a structure. But that infinite energy, not as it naturally flows through the system that Hashem created, but as it exists prior, is able to actually work around the system. But it requires something in this limited world of reaction, this world of cause and effect. It requires it requires something that exists in this world to be open to receiving this infinite nature. So when we start saying, I exist in this world, I'm a limited human being. I'm born, I'm going to die, I eat when I get hungry. But I am not going to be a product of fear, which is a natural reaction. I'm not going to be captive to my own individual awareness and knowledge. Then Hashem has a receiver, has the trigger to allow infinite flow to come into this world. And Hashem's infinite flow is higher than chesed. It is all good. And therefore, it allows for the tracht gut, think positive. It will be good because you've created the trigger response. And as long as there's a doubt to that in your head, you're stuck in the logical system of control and limitation. And one needs to break completely free. And so Moshe says, you know how stuff happened in the past. Allow that to dispel any doubt that you have that Hashem can't. Don't use it to say, right, that's the military strategy we're going to use in the future. But rather use it that if you have to go on a military journey, don't at all think for a second that it's completely up to your military journey, your military strategy of conquering the land. It's Hashem who has split seas in the past, who's going to continue to operate for you in the future, provided you remain connected and attached to Hashem in a format of belief. That's the first part. Any questions on everything that we've just discussed?
I'm just trying to reconcile this idea of that a book came out a number of years ago called The Secret, and it
Yes,
kind of touches on the same thing, but the only thing is that it doesn't include Hashem in the conversation, so it's
that's
it's
right.
effectively idol worship, and Hevel. But the idea that we can express what it is that we want to achieve, and Hashem can make that happen. How do we reconcile that with the fact that we at the same time we need to have bitachon, we need to have trust that what we perceive is good for us is not necessarily what is good for us or what is good for the bigger picture.
I'm not sure what your question is. I feel like you've just answered it. That's exactly what bitachon is. Bitachon is the trust that Hashem knows what is best and will do what's best, and not necessarily what I imagine to be best is actually the best, but rather the acceptance that what is happening to me is actually what is best in a strange way. And I feel like that's what you've just said. Maybe I've just moved commas and full stops without changing your words, but that's exactly what bitachon is. The challenge is that we're designed to survive. We're designed with the brain that we've been given. We're designed to fear things. And so what our challenge is not to destroy fear, because that's a very dangerous thing. If you destroy fear, then you start walking through, I don't know, the most dangerous parts of town. And it's just not the way to go. Now, why not? Maybe just go with bitachon. Well, the definition of bitachon and how you apply it is actually very much spelled out in many texts throughout the centuries. No greater than the Chovos HaLevavos 800 years ago, 700 years ago. He who says that bitachon is to work within the world that Hashem has created according to the rules that Hashem has created, meaning income is a result of work, and ingestion of nutrients is a result of eating. However, don't think for a second that that's the only way that Hashem can deliver. But Hashem wants us to work in the world, not because he wants us to work for a living, but because by going to work, there is some sort of spiritual energy that is rescued, that is elevated, that is initiated, that is whatever, by you being in the workplace. The workplace wasn't created for you to go and get money. The workplace was designed for your particular soul to be in that particular location, in that particular industry, contributing, because that's where your soul makes a difference to the world. By the way, you'll get money. By the way, you'll get money. But if the whole thing is, I have to do this because that's where I get whatever it is that I get, then that's like The Secret. Like if you really put your mind to it, you'll achieve it. No. I get what I get because Hashem gives me what I need. And Hashem gives me everything that I need. And the more I have faith in that, not only will I be living more stress-free, but the more likely it's actually going to result in that, because I'm not creating any impositions between the flow of Hashem's shefa, Hashem's flow of energy into my life, and my reality. And so we should not look at work as being where we go to earn money, but rather work is where I get to express my ability, and not in an artsy-fartsy way, and don't do the work you don't like. Part of the work is getting nitty-gritty and doing the hard slogs and doing things that you don't like, because that's part of the work. But all those hard slogs, those hard phone calls, that hard driving, that hard lifting, whatever it is, that hard cooking, whatever it is that you do for your work, that is part of the spiritual journey. It's not just the euphoria of, oh, I went to work and someone was crying and I gave them a hug. No. Could be that as you were pouring the oil into the car, as you were chopping up cauliflower for the soup, you had this thought about Marab Masach Hashem, how great is Hashem, look at this intricate nature of a cauliflower, whatever it is. I don't know, you said Baruch Hashem, at that moment the cauliflower became a trigger for Hashem's flow into this world. We have no idea why we are where we're meant to be. The bitachon is that Hashem is going to provide as I need, and I'm going to have absolute trust that I'm doing what I need to be doing because that's what I need to be doing, not because that's the only way I can get whatever material things I require at the end of the day. Good. All right, let's move to the next the next parasha topic, which was which really flows on from what we've just discussed, which was, where does life come from? Does it come from Hashem, or does it come from food? Now, if we go back into the Chumash, we have this, the second aliyah. It says, "Hisham lecha pentishkach es Hashem lekech levilti shmai mitzvos mishpat v'chukasav asher anech mitzav chayon." Don't start thinking that you've made it yourself. The next pasuk says, "Pentecha v'savato v'vatim tovim tivna v'yishavta," which is verse 12. And it says, you might then eat and be satisfied, and you'll build good houses and you'll live in them. And he goes on to say that you're going to start believing that everything is a result of your own making. And then we get into the whole discussion about self-righteousness, which is the next aliyah, which of course then leads to the golden calf conversation, which we're not going to be having today. So Hashem is saying there's nothing wrong with building houses. Hashem is saying there's nothing wrong with going to work and earning money. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't think for a second that that is of your own making. So this is a very interesting idea. There is another pasuk in regards to food, and it uses food as a euphemism for a lot more, which is Le'al alechem levad yichya adam, that man does not live on bread, el dvar Hashem, but rather we live from the word of Hashem. So do we live from the word of Hashem, or do we live from food? So we actually have started this conversation in the previous topic. We eat bread, we eat meat, we eat vegetables, we eat these things because if we don't eat, we'll die. Because the way Hashem designed the world is that the human body is sustained by these physical elements. Question is, what sustains these physical elements? After a person dies, like anything in this world, the body begins to decompose. What stops decomposition while we're alive? Why doesn't our body decompose when we're living? So, Al Pi Teva, as science explains, the reason why we don't decompose while we're living is because we have antibodies, and we have bacteria, and we have all sorts of, we have an immune system, and we have all sorts of things going on to fight off anything that may be attacking or destroying the body. When we die, that stuff is no longer in operation, and so anything can attack the body and break it down. So why does it work when we're alive, and why don't they continue working when we're dead? So we say, well, when you're alive, it's like a fridge when it's plugged in. There's energy and it's running. And when you disconnect it, you've got no coldness in the fridge because you've got no power. Okay, fine. So you need the heart beating and the brain functioning in order for the immune system to be working. But what makes the heart beat and the brain function? Well, it's got sufficient fuel and it's and balance and it works. Yeah, but what makes it work? What is the difference between a living person and a dead person? What is that thing that is no longer there? It's called life. But where does life go? What is life? Where does life exist, and where does life go? Where does life exist when I'm alive? Where does life go when I'm dead? As we start getting to the very edge of it, of everything with these sorts of questions, and they become very uncomfortable. It's a bit like consciousness. What is consciousness? Is it the sum total of a whole lot of different things? What is it? And they become very, very frustrating conversations if you're trying to measure it. So the whole idea of this entity, a immeasurable entity, in that it can't be measured, principles of measurement, that is the neshama. It is the soul, it is the energy, it is the life force. Neshama is integrated with the body lives. When the neshama is no longer integrated with the body, it stops living. It's simple as that. So the difference between a living person and a dead person is the neshama. The neshama has exited the body. Now, that is not just true of people, that is true of everything. When the neshama exits something, it leaves. It leaves, and there is no energy to make the thing live. So this is true of animals, this is true of plants, this is true of inanimate objects. As long as it exists, there must be a Dvar Hashem, there must be an Neshama, there must be a soul. There must be a deliberate connection with Hashem on an internal level, of integrated belonging. And when that begins to decompose and slowly recedes further and further, and no relationship at all, at which point it ceases to exist in its own form. And it becomes a part of whatever else eats it. It's like food. You eat it, eventually it loses its form. It becomes your own blood and your own body. So what sustains food? Killed an animal, you plucked an apple off a tree, you've beaten the wheat into flour and now made bread. What makes the bread, the fruit, the meat, the fish exist if it's dead? So the answer is, although it has been disconnected from its life growth source, it is not fully dead yet in the concept of, and therefore, what is a soul? The soul is an emanation of Hashem. We call it the Dvar Hashem, the word of Hashem, because the word of Hashem doesn't leave Hashem. It's how Hashem expresses. Tapuach is an apple. These Hebrew words, tapuach, tov pei vav ches, those are the verbal energies that create this physical thing called an apple. And so that word, the Dvar Hashem, allows an apple to exist. As long as those Hebrew energies are radiating that they do, an apple exists. So that apple existing is not because it exists because the neshama within it allows it to exist. When we eat food, we're not just ingesting the food, but we're taking on board the spiritual energy item as well. Whatever we physically connect with, we're not just physically connected to spiritually connecting. So if you come in proximity to something, you're not just physically coming in proximity to something, you're spiritually coming into proximity with something. If that is a negative something, even if you don't touch it, you're now in the environment of something negative. How much more so when you ingest it, internalize it, etc. So Hashem says, build a house and live in it. Eat your food and enjoy it. But don't get lost in the superficiality of what you see and experience. Don't forget that the house, that base yud sof, that food, that ochel, aleph vav ches lamed, chaf lamed, don't forget that these are spiritual entities that are manifesting in physical entities. And as soon as you start forgetting Hashem, you start thinking, I'm the creator of this. You see that house? It's made of stacked bricks. You know what stacked bricks are? They're top of the other. This house stands because of me. No, it doesn't. This house stands because the concept of base yud sof, is that things can be constructed in a particular way. And if you take things like ayin tzadik, eitz, wood, or you take aleph ves nun, even, stone, and you do things with it, Hashem says, I have designed them in a way that they can do that. And therefore, base is mine, even is mine, eitz is mine. Enjoy it. I've given it to you to utilize, but don't think for a second it's not connected to me. So what do we live off? Do we live off food or Hashem? The answer is we live off Hashem. But the way to physically engage with Hashem in a particular way is through eating. That's how we do it. We eat, and it is the Dvar Hashem that then sustains us. Is it about food? 100%. In the process, but Moshe did it. Moshe went up onto Har Sinai, and he was there for 40 days and 40 nights. And lechem le'achalti. So what did Moshe live off? So Moshe experienced something that has not really been recorded in the Torah as ever existing before or after. He lived on a spiritual, what's it called? IV. In that he was surrounded by the Shekhinah when he went up on Har Sinai. He was physically surrounded by Hashem's presence. And as a result of that intense engagement with Hashem, his soul, Moshe's neshama, and Moshe's body, his nefesh, the element of his soul that sustains his physical flesh, was actually receiving the right energy from the Shekhinah in order to sustain the body, and he didn't need any food or drink. But that is not how Hashem has created the world. So don't go looking around for belief. I believe Hashem will sustain me if I don't eat. Hashem gave us an instruction to eat. So that's like saying, in a capitalist society, I believe that I can make money by not doing anything. The whole system of a capitalist economy is that you do have to work and you do have to participate and contribute. You can't make up your own rules if the rules say don't make up your own rules. So if the rule says go and eat, and you say, I believe Hashem can sustain me, 100% Hashem can sustain you. But in your belief, you're breaking the very code that Hashem wants us to live by. So what sort of belief is it when you believe in Hashem, but you don't believe in doing what Hashem wants? And therefore, when we eat because that is the system Hashem has created. However, it's not the food that sustains us, but rather it is the energy within the food that sustains us. And the answer to the question of what is looking after us, is it Hashem or is it the food? Any questions?
And just a comment that Eliyahu also fasted for 40 days and 40 nights.
Yes, Eliyahu did do that with a bit of a struggle. That's true. But I don't think we've got anywhere in the Torah that in Tanakh you have it, but I don't think we have anywhere in the Torah anyone before Moshe doing it. We don't have it with Adam and Chava. We don't have it with Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, or Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. In fact, quite the contrary, we have them constantly traveling because there are famines. But yes, there are exceptions of some beautiful, and the commonality of all those exceptions are people who are highly spiritual in that. Ben, you want to ask something?
Yes. So how does the illness sort of fit into the
all right,
this equation?
So let's move on to that. How does illness fit in? It's a really, really, really good question. So there are many layers to how we would answer such a question. Number one, illness is a part of the system that Hashem created. Hashem created night and he created light. He created black and he created white. He created youth and he created old age. These are all parts of the system. Why? Don't know, but that's the system. Part of the system is illness. Part of the system are weeds that grow in a garden. Now the question is, must the world have these things? Must the world have illness? Must the world have weeds? The answer is no, it's not needed. How do I know that? Because when Hashem created Gan Eden, he didn't create illness and he didn't create weeds. He didn't create it. What Hashem must have created, though, is the potential and the capacity for these things to exist. Otherwise, they never would have been able to be born. But they're not required. They are things that exist because the world has evolved and progressed in a direction where these things come into the world, and therefore they are now a part of our reality. And therefore, one can contract a disease or an illness, and maybe we can fight it and get better, or perhaps we can't and we die. Now, once we incorporate the ideas of hashgacha pratis, of divine providence and Hashem's involvement in every aspect of life and reality, then we look at illness, even if it's something negative, we say it's still a part of Hashem's system, that for whatever reason, Hashem decided to incorporate that in the particular location and the particular time in order to make its impact on whoever it is that it's meant to impact. But the illness is not independent of Hashem. However, the concept of negativity is explained in Kabbalah as the metaphor that's often given in Chassidus is, remember, Chassidus was written in Eastern Europe, and Chassidus generally does not get written by people who love pets. Generally, you don't find in Eastern Europe that Jews own dogs and cats and guinea pigs and fish. We just don't have that sort of relationship with animals in that Eastern European Jewish history. So dogs are often not seen as necessarily being inherently affectionate in the day-to-day life of the Hasidic writer. And are generally also seen as pets that belong to people who can be quite oppressive. So the example, that's all by way of example to understand why you may own a pet dog and say, that's not at all my experience with dogs. But the metaphor that's given is that there are two ways to feed. You can feed your child or your loved one. You bring them food, and you put it in front of them, and you tell them, this is what I've made for you, and this is what's in it, and you can answer all the questions, and you're happy to serve them and feed them and wine and dine them. And then there's how you feed dogs. How do you feed dogs? You take scraps and you chuck it to them. You care enough to feed them, but you don't tell your dogs what the food is. You don't cook it deliberately for them. You give them the scraps and the leftovers and the bones and the meat that other people aren't eating. The metaphor is that once the people have finished eating, they take the scraps and they feed it to the dog. Not only do they take the scraps and feed it to the dog, what's the style of feeding a dog? Is that you throw it over your shoulder, you chuck it sideways, you don't serve it up. Now, in modern society where people have pets, etc., that's not at all. And so, of course, it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an attitude. The negatives that exist for whatever reason Hashem created, and Hashem allows them to exist, and Hashem must have an energy that is allowing that to exist. But it's not existing from the frontal position, it's existing from the metaphorical back position, in that it's being fed kilachayad, backhandedly. And so for whatever reason illness exists, it's not necessarily part of what Hashem wants in this world overtly, but it's part of the balance that must exist in the world right now. It was born out of the original negativity of eating from the Eitz Hadas, of Adam and Chava eating from the Eitz Hadas in the Garden of Eden. And therefore it came into the world, and there was a new form of balance. Before that, the balance was a balance of all good. After that, the balance became the balance of good and bad, right and wrong. And with that, we have the birth of illness, and illness becomes incorporated into part of the process of how Hashem runs the world and how the world continues to function going forward. I just want to finish one thing on that question, which is when we look at certain negativities. So this is a very it's a very insensitive statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that is, what is the greatest thing for an economy, and what is the greatest thing for scientific research? What is the one thing that really is wonderful for an economy and very, very important for the progression of scientific research? What's the answer? War. War is what spurns incredible research and development, and it spurns incredible economic activity. So the very act of very activity which involves the killing and the harming of people in the world is also the very thing that, in the strange way that the world has created, the way Hashem created the world, the very strange thing is that war is also a part of the process of spurning good in this world. It's mental, it's crazy, can't believe it. But that's what it is. Now, in the Gan Eden way, you didn't need war for scientific development and economic progress. But in the times of Gan Eden, good begot good. Now we live in a world where good begets good, and bad is sometimes required in order to beget good, in the weird balancing, and that goes for illness and things like that. That shouldn't make illness any less painful for anyone, or more comforting. But it explains in context what we're talking about. Is illness independent of Hashem? Absolutely not. It's a part of how Hashem operates and expresses himself in this world. Okay, Ben?
Part of it is though that Hashem says, if you do my Torah, I will keep you from all these sicknesses that are in Egypt. And we also because we break spiritual laws and physical laws, we've discovered lots of things about nutrition, and yet most people ignore the laws of nutrition. So it's because we often contribute negatively that the sicknesses occur. And
yeah. which in a way brings us to the last part of the parasha discussion, the third topic, which is removing the reward and punishment narrative, because often people, particularly in a religious context, will talk about do this and God will reward you, do that and Hashem will punish you. Now we find that in this week's parasha in a very, 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 very famous paragraph. You all know it. It is the second paragraph of the Shema. The second main paragraph of Shema is V'haya im Shemaya. And that is found in this week's parasha. Where is it? I think it's in chapter 11. Yes, it's halfway through chapter 11. You get the paragraph of V'haya im Shemaya, which means, and if you listen to my mitzvahs that I commanded you today, says Hashem, then the rain is going to fall, and if you don't, there's going to be famine. So if you look at that, you say, Menachem, how could we not have reward and punishment in religion? God designed the religion and stipulates quite clearly that if you do good things, then Hashem will reward, and if you do bad things, Hashem will punish. But actually, the words reward and punishment don't quite occur in these paragraphs in that sense. It's actually more like the word consequence, which in modern parenting, we all know that consequences, when you tell a child there's going to be a consequence, you have to put a introductory term, an adjective. It's going to be a good consequence, or there's going to be a bad consequence. Because a consequence is just a reaction to whatever happens. If you do something good, it's going to net a good outcome. Not that as a reward for doing good, you get good. So what is this? It says that if you keep the mitzvahs, Hashem says, I'm going to make it rain. Come on. I understand if I give someone a hug, they're going to hug me back. Fine. That's not a reward. That's a reaction. But what does my mitzvahs got to do with the rain? What does me doing bad mean that I'm triggering disease? It sounds very much like a wrathful, powerful God that says, carrot, stick, carrot, stick, carrot, stick. But actually, there's a very different way to look at this whole narrative. Instead of saying that it's about reward and punishment, why not say it is indeed consequence? But let's go beyond the physical understanding of the world and look at a far more integrated spiritual physical reality. The example, I haven't used this example in many, many years of teaching, but I used to, for some reason, it used to come up in all my classes at Spirit Grove. And that is the example of a photocopier. When you use a photocopier, there is the right way and there is the wrong way to use it. The wrong way to use a photocopier is to take whatever it is that you want to photocopy and put it on the glass and yell at the photocopier to start copying it. Why would you yell at it? Because whenever you yell at anything in life, you get your way. You yell at the shopkeeper, you get their attention. You yell at the person in front of you, they'll move. So you want something, you got to yell. So you yell at a photocopier. You'll be yelling till you're blue in the face and nothing's going to happen. So it doesn't work. So what you do after that is what everyone knows to do when you don't get your way. What do? You start getting physical. You start hitting it. You start kicking it. You start swearing at it. You start abusing it. Because we all know that if you bash someone hard enough, they're going to do whatever you want. So why not do it to the photocopier? And instead, what the photocopier does is it spits out black ink everywhere. You kicked it too hard. So in a caveman story, it'd be the photocopier has fought back. You hit the photocopier, one day that photocopier is going to turn around and it's going to spit you in the face with black ink. You tell that to someone and say, what is this, a fairy tale? Photocopiers aren't conscious. They don't spit out black ink. You obviously kicked it at the ink, where the ink cartridge is, and you kicked it and it caused it to, and the force exploded or shattered it. And so the black ink came flying out and it hit you in the face. You didn't insult the photocopier. You just put too much force in a particular location of the photocopier, and what it did was it led to the explosion and the expulsion of black ink. So whose narrative is correct? Is it the childish narrative of the photocopier fights back, or is it the more plausible mechanical explanation, scientific explanation, that when you apply too much force, things break and they explode? It's obviously the second. Photocopy doesn't fight back. So that's what Hashem says in Vahim Shemaya. Hashem says, I created this physical world. So this physical world is actually on a not an axis, it's on a spectrum of spirituality. The physical is still spiritual, and there is a whole system that makes the physical present itself. And there's a whole system that makes the physical exist and not exist. And I have every part to do with it, says Hashem. When you do mitzvahs and when you have the right spiritual flow in this world, then that balanced spiritual flow in this world will translate in physical representation of that balance. And when you don't have spiritual balance in this world, then that spiritual imbalance is going to represent itself in physical imbalance. So it's not if you do the right thing, then the rain will flow in the right time. It's that rain is the product of a spiritual energy, but if you're impacting the spiritual energies and warping the whole system, they're not going to work correctly. So what Vayim Shammai is saying is it's not reward or punishment. It's just the process of natural consequence, of spiritual consequence. I'm not a wrathful, angry God. I'm not a happy-go-lucky God. I am the system. I'm telling you, please, when you buy a photocopier, read the manual. You want to copy something, read the manual. It's written in so many languages. You press the 1, you press the 5, you press the green button, and it will do what it needs to do. You want to understand how it works? No worries. Go and get an engineering degree. Go and study the mechanics of a photocopier. Watch a YouTube video, by all means. You want to know how this world works? Study the Torah, study Kabbalah, study science. Bring it all together. Amazing, beautiful. But until then, don't be a fool. Don't be a fool and say, I didn't study science. I didn't study spirituality. I don't know how it works. I'm going to guess my way through it. Don't be a fool and say, I don't know how photocopiers work. I'm not reading the manual. Read the manual. And if you want, spend the rest of your life understanding what the science behind the manual is. All Moshe is saying is, all Hashem is saying in Vayim Shammai is there is no reward and punishment. There is only Hashem's flow in this world. Corrupt the flow, we're going to end up with a corrupted manifestation and expression of the flow. Make the flow come right, and we're going to see what balance and correct flow manifests as. Simple as that. So there is no reward and punishment in Judaism. There is no bribery. It is none of that. And if I could just finish with one interesting idea on tefillah, on prayer, which I learned last Shabbos, is don't pray. Last week's parsha was Veschanan, and I was mischanein. I prayed to Hashem. But the form of prayer that is tachanun is to say, don't give me anything. Hashem, I want something, but don't give it to me because I deserve it. Don't give it to me because remember I did this or because I promised you I'm going to do that. Please give me what I want because I'm asking you to give it to me. Because you can give it and I'm asking for it. And I'm being humble in this moment of trying to tap into you and bringing your energy into my world, into my life. That's it. No bribery. There's no need to bribe God. There's no need for God to reward us. The relationship that we have with Hashem is one of spiritual existence on a what was the word I used before? On a spectrum. And that's it. That's it. No reward and punishment. Only giving or giving less. Giving in a corrupt manner, giving in a gleich manner, in a straight and appropriate manner. And that is how we dispel the whole reward and punishment thing. Are there any other questions?
Nachum, thank you. I came in late. I apologize, but I was busy with work.
No, 100%. It's the middle of the day. I can see you just asked a question.
Yeah. Did you discuss that or mention that today?
That today is Tu B'Av?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Can I ask you a quick word on today's date, why it's relevant, important to us?
Before you do, I just want to say goodbye to everyone on YouTube. We're just going to have a bit of a Zoom conversation here. So goodbye, YouTube. Thanks for being a part of the share.